Answer. Would some honourable member care to move that the House take note of miscellaneous business? The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And that point of order just brings to attention the housing problem that we have in New Zealand. When you have 5% of our housing stock currently not being used, that's around 3,300 homes, which could actually house people on lower incomes. That, sir, is a disgrace. That, sir, is a disgrace because right now people in my electorate anyway are living in cars, in caravans, 2 or 3 families to a home when they could actually be living in a state house instead. There is a real problem in New Zealand with housing and housing affordability. No longer, Mr Speaker, is the Kiwi dream of owning your own home a real possibility for thousands and thousands of Kiwis. No longer can you get a chance to be on that bottom rung of the ladder. House prices have gone up. In Auckland in particular, in Christchurch, Tauranga and a number of other places, in more than half of the country. And so it was with great anticipation, Mr Speaker, enormous anticipation, that we wanted to hear what Bill English was going to announce when to the Productivity Commission's report on housing. We waited 7 months. We waited 7 months. The build-up, sir, was excruciating. And what did we get? An extraordinary letdown. An extraordinary letdown. They weakened the Resource Management Act. They lowered industry standards. They pushed more responsibility onto councils. And they tried to make land cheaper by expanding the boundaries of Auckland, for example. So you have to get on a motorway and drive for an hour rather than actually do something intelligent, which is medium-sized scale housing inside of Auckland. That's it. That was it. That was to solve New Zealand's housing problem. It fails utterly, and that's what everybody said, not just us, not just me, not just Annette King, but, for example, the Mayor of Tauranga. In my view, it failed to take into account the reality of the situation, he said. Brian Fallow says, it's fair to judge a policy package like the one on housing affordability announced this week by what they do to relieve those problems being housing affordability. In short, precious little. John Armstrong, package? What package? The plan looks like a rough first draft. In other words, Mr Speaker, nobody is impressed with this government's performance on housing. It is woeful and it is disappointing. There is a real shortage of houses for younger people wanting to get that first chance on the ladder, Mr Speaker, and this government is determined not to do anything about it. It gives up on the most basic things to do. One thing they might want to look at, for example, is a capital gains tax, to at least not allow the price of houses to go through the roof, and at least put our investment into productive enterprises rather than into the Auckland property market. Sir, even when there is a possibility of a community housing, state housing and community housing, as in the Hobsonville scheme, sir, the government cancels it. The Prime Minister calls it economic vandalism. That's what he calls it, economic vandalism, to put social housing into a housing development. 3,000 houses, 1,000 of those were going to be houses that would have been able to accommodate low-income families. The government cut it from 1,000 to 100. And guess what, sir? Now it's down to 17. 17. And they wonder why there's a housing affordability problem. That's why there's a housing affordability problem, because they're not doing anything about it. And you've got Craig Heatley, who is completely asleep at the wheel. Completely asleep. Sorry. Phil Heatley. And even Phil Heatley.
Order.
Bill Heatley says he agrees with everything and does absolutely nothing. He agreed with everything in the poverty report, and he did. What did he do? He cut funding to community housing. He cut funding for state house maintenance.
Order. Before I call the Honourable Bill English, the question by way is that the motion be agreed to, but the level of interjection, actually the level of noise was discourteous. I hate interrupting members speaking, but it is so discourteous to have a high level of background noise. The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, well, I haven't yet met the Housing Minister, Craig Heatley.